Have you ever stopped to think about how our lives often feel so well structured?
Hmm.
From starting school, then decades working, and then hopefully retirement. It just feels like this natural
It
path.
does seem inevitable, doesn't it?
Exactly. But what if it isn't entirely natural? What if these stages are actually profoundly shaped by society itself? It's this fascinating, often kind of invisible concept.
It really is.
So for this deep dive, that's exactly what we're unpacking, the institutionalization of the life course. We're drawing on the work of sociologist Martin Kohli, specifically his really impactful 1988 paper, and then a follow-up piece from 2007.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to explore how modern societies have systematically structured our lives over time. We'll focus particularly on work and retirement, how they intertwine,
Right.
and also how our understanding of these patterns has, shifted over the decades. This deep dive should give you a great shortcut to getting up to speed on this essential topic.
Okay, let's jump in. This core idea from Kohli's 1988 paper, that modern Western societies are fundamentally work societies. What did he really mean by that?
Well, it's foundational. He argued work wasn't just about the economy. It became the gravitational center, as he put it.
The gravitational center, I like that.
Yeah, and classical sociologists like Marx, Weber, Durkheim, they all kind of saw this, despite their big differences.
Hmm.
Formal, paid work became the main source of identity, status, even moral value.
So it's how you knew who you were, how society saw you.
Precisely. It defined your place, your contribution, and what's really illuminating is how this helps us understand the rise of old age as a specific, separate life stage.
Separate from work, you mean?
Exactly, separated from active work life. And the historical data, especially from Germany, is just startling.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about that.
Okay, so get this. In the late 1800s, 1881-90, only about 19.7% of German men even survived to the pension age of 70.
Wow, less than 1 in 5.
Right. But fast forward to the mid-1980s, 1983-85, and that number jumps to 63% surviving to 70.
A huge shift.
Massive. And look at the flip side. Labor force participation for men aged 60-70. In 1895, it was 79%.
Still working.
Mostly, yeah. By 1985, it plummeted to just 23.9%.
Okay, so most men in that age group were not working by then.
Exactly. And life expectancy at retirement age also shot up. For women at age 60, it went from about 13 years in the 1880s to over 20 years in the 1980s.
20 extra years of life post-retirement age.
Yeah, so, this wasn't just a small change. Old age became structurally distinct, defined by not being in the formal labor force, and it became a long phase of life for most people.
So with those kinds of numbers, it's clear something huge changed societally. How did sociological theory, which was mostly developed before this massive demographic shift, even start to grapple with it?
Yeah, that's the core of Kohli's 1988 challenge. It really put pressure on the existing theories. They just weren't built for a world where old age was such a dominant, distinct phase for so many people.
Right. It must have felt like the ground rules had changed entirely.
Absolutely. And Kohli identified three main areas where aging societies really challenged those theories.
Okay, let's break those down. What was the first one?
The first challenge was social inequality.
Okay.
So traditional class theories, they're often rooted in your job, your position in the production process. Think Marx, right?
Right.
Worker versus owner.
Right, where you fit in the economy.
Exactly. But these theories struggle when you have this huge, growing group of people, retirees, who have permanently left paid work. How do you classify them?
Yeah, where do they fit in the class structure if they're not defined by their job anymore?
Precisely. So Kohli talks about this idea of welfare classes. It's a concept where your income, your status, comes less from your job and more from citizenship rights, like public pensions.
Ah, so your income source shifts from employment to the state, essentially.
In this view, yes, it's a different basis for stratification.
But what about the criticism? The idea of structured dependency, that retirement just makes older people reliant and marginalized.
That's a really important counterpoint. Kohli definitely addresses it. He acknowledged that view, but he also pointed out something crucial.
What was that?
For people who had really precarious work lives, bouncing between jobs, low pay, instability.
Right, insecure work.
Exactly. For them, getting a regular pension, even if modest, could actually mean more security and control over their income than they ever had while working.
Huh. So retirement could actually be empowering for some, financially speaking.
It's a paradox, right? But yeah, potentially. It wasn't universally a negative dependency. This really underlines the need for what he called a biographical conception of class.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means understanding inequality not as just a snapshot like you are working class, but as a dynamic process. It unfolds across your whole life.
Ah, so it includes your past jobs, your experiences, how you see yourself over time.
Exactly. Both the objective positions you hold and your subjective experience of that journey through life. It's much more nuanced.
Okay, that makes sense. So moving to the second challenge, cultural meaning structures. We talked about the work ethic being central.
Yeah, almost like the dominant cultural code, or as some said, the religion of modern society. Productivity, contribution through work.
Right. So the big question then becomes, how does a society hold on to that core value system when a huge chunk of its population is structurally excluded from the very thing that defines it work?
That is a dilemma. How did theories try to resolve that?
Well, one early attempt was disengagement theory. The idea was that old age is functionally necessary, a time for withdrawal, both for society and for the individual, and supposedly gratifying for both.
Disengagement. That sounds a bit convenient, doesn't it? Almost like justifying putting people out to pasture.
It definitely faced criticism. People questioned the legitimacy of excluding a whole group just based on age, especially as retirement got longer and longer.
Yeah, retiring at, say, 59 or 60 with potentially 20-plus healthy years ahead, disengagement doesn't really fit, does it? It feels inadequate for many, certainly. So another idea emerged from David Eckert called the busy ethic.
The busy ethic. Okay, what's that?
It's the idea that you legitimize retirement by being actively engaged in leisure, pursuing hobbies earnestly, volunteering, staying busy. It sort of transfers the value of industriousness from work to non-work activities.
So you're proving your worth by being a productive retiree.
Kind of, yeah. It creates a sense of continuity with the work ethic.
But I wonder, could that constant talk about being so busy in retirement actually signal, the fragility of the work ethic as a way to justify this phase? Maybe it's more like an ideology, a way we convince ourselves it still fits the old mold.
That's a really insightful, critical take. Is it a real value shift or just papering over the cracks? And that leads to another possibility. Could an actual ethic of leisure emerge?
Like valuing leisure for its own sake.
Potentially. I mean, historically, not working was often a sign of high status. Think of the aristocracy. So maybe there's potential for a cultural shift where leisure isn't just filling time, but is seen as a positive state itself.
Interesting. Okay, the third challenge, socialization. How do people maintain a sense of self, continuity in who they are once work, that central organizing force, is gone?
Yeah, what holds you together? Prior theories weren't great here. Some assumed values learned early just carried you through the over-socialized view. Too simple. Others focused only on the immediate situation, but they kind of lost the sense of the person, the individual navigating it all.
So what was Kohli's alternative?
This is where his biographical conception of socialization is really key. The idea is that we actively cope with reality. We're not just puppets of norms or situations. We do it by anticipating and remembering.
Anticipating and remembering, like looking forward and looking back.
Exactly. We actively construct and maintain our life story, our narrative. A great example is reminiscence in old age.
Telling stories about the past.
Right. But it's not just psychological nostalgia. It's a social act. It reaffirms past experiences, past identities, often tied to things material culture.
Like old photos, furniture, objects that hold meaning.
Precisely. They become anchors to your past self, your life story. And there's a really poignant example Newman gave about a plant closure in a town where it had been the main employer for like a century.
Oh, wow.
For the oldest workers who could retire, the financial hit wasn't always the worst part. It was the symbolic blow.
How so?
Their workplace, the place where maybe their parents and kids also worked, was gone. They couldn't point to it anymore. It made their whole life's work feel, as they put it, worthless for the future. It shattered that collective memory, that identity tied to the place.
Gosh, that's powerful. It really shows how work isn't just about a paycheck. Okay, so we've seen the challenges Kohli laid out in '88. Let's jump forward almost 20 years to his 2007 piece. How did he see things then? Did this institutionalized life course hold up?
Well, his central claim, if anything, got stronger. He argued the life course isn't just an institution, it's become a major institution in modern society.
Like on par with the economy or the state?
He positions it that way, yes.
Yeah.
Not just separate bits like family, education, work, retirement, but an interconnected system, an articulated institutional complex with its own logic.
Okay, so just to recap his original model from the 80s, there were those 5 key ideas, right?
Hmm.
1, it became more relevant, temporalization. 2, it got standardized by age chronologization, the sort of standard path.
Right, the normative life course.
3, it was part of individualization, freeing us
Mhm.
from old ties, but also channeling us in new ways. 4, it was built around wage labor, that 3-part structure:
Yeah,
prepare, work, retire.
the tripartition, yeah.
And 5, it worked on 2 levels: people actually moving through jobs and stages, and also how people think about their own lives, their biographical view.
Exactly. And he stressed the functions this whole system served. It helped rationalize production, rationalize individual lives, integrate work and family, manage generational succession in jobs, and maintain social control.
It brought order and predictability.
Yes, essential lifetime security and predictability, as he termed it.
So fast forward to 2007, the big question is, was that system, that predictable life course, starting to break down or erode?
That's the million-dollar question he tackled. Looking back, the 1960s, the Fordist era, was probably the peak of standardization.
You mean steady jobs, stable families, clear path for most men anyway.
Pretty much. Rapid growth, low unemployment, strong welfare states, normal biographies seemed common. But then things started changing.
Right. And Kohli outlined 3 ways people interpreted those changes, correct?
Yes. First, the idea of a completely new historical break, like post-Fordism, a totally different system. Second, a kind of regression back to older patterns, maybe like 19th century family structures. But, and this is key, with individuals choosing these paths now, not just being forced into them.
Right. The decision-making is different.
Fundamentally different. And third, the idea of continuity with change. An ongoing modernization process leading to overall institutional continuity, coupled with some destandardization.
So the basic structure remains, but with more flexibility or variation around the edges.
That's the idea. And
Yeah.
empirically, Kohli argued the evidence mostly supports this third view. The system is adapting, flexing, not collapsing.
And this plays out differently in different places, right? These
Yeah.
regimes.
Absolutely. You have different models: the liberal market states like the US or UK, the conservative welfare states like Germany, the social democratic ones in Scandinavia, Southern European models. They all shape the life course differently based on their mix of politics and economics.
So no single global pattern, even with some convergence.
Significant national differences definitely persist, even as, say, China gradually adopts some Western-like life course features.
Okay, so if the overall structure is adapting, what about individual lives? Are they becoming more varied?
Yes, there's definitely more differentiation and heterogeneity since the 60s. And a crucial point Kohli makes is how aging interacts with class.
How so?
Societal aging doesn't level the playing field. If anything, it tends to deepen the divisions within a generation.
You mean the gap between rich and poor retirees gets wider?
Exactly. How you experience old age becomes highly stratified by your income, your education, your past career, even your lifestyle choices. The advantages and disadvantages accumulate over the life course.
And what about gender? You mentioned the Fordist model was male-centric.
Right. Women's lives have changed dramatically. More education, much higher labor force participation. Their life courses are converging towards that 3-stage model.
But not identical to men's.
Definitely not. The connection between paid work and unpaid family or care work is still very different for women. Gender remains a huge dynamic factor shaping how the life course unfolds.
Now, this leads us to something really surprising you touched on earlier, the persistence of standardization, despite all the talk about change.
It is quite counterintuitive, isn't it? We hear so much about the end of the lifelong job, radical flexibility, but the data Kohli reviewed often showed less dramatic shifts than you'd expect.
Okay, give us some examples.
Well, take family life. In Western countries, living together in a committed partnership has remained remarkably stable. Yes, there's more cohabitation instead of marriage, but not necessarily a total retreat from partnerships. One German study found no significant pluralization of family forms between the 70s and mid-90s.
Interesting. What about work? Is the job for life truly dead?
The picture is more complex. That normal work contract did decrease in Germany, but a lot of that was rising female part-time work. For men, full-time work, though maybe fewer hours per week, remained the norm. And crucially, job tenure, how long people stay with one employer, didn't actually plummet in most OECD countries between the 80s and mid-90s. Even into the 2000s, long-term employment was surprisingly stable in many places.
Okay, so maybe not as much churning as we assume. And retirement age.
This is really striking. Despite reforms trying to make it more flexible or even get rid of mandatory retirement, like in the US, that age boundary around 60-65 has stayed remarkably powerful in shaping when people actually leave work.
People still aim for that window.
The data suggests so. For German men, the variation in retirement age across different birth cohorts hardly changed. That standard exit point remained quite effective.
So here's the central paradox then, isn't it? Why does this structure, especially that retirement age norm, stick around so stubbornly? It seems to clash with modern values like treating everyone equally regardless of age or individual choice. And it even seems counterproductive for society, maybe wasting older workers' skills or straining pension funds. Why is it so resilient?
That's the core puzzle Kohli tackles in the 2007 piece. The answer lies in these deep structural anchors. Pension systems aren't just about income for the elderly.
What else do they do?
They are crucial tools for regulating labor markets, managing the flow of people out of jobs in an orderly way. They also give employers tools to manage their workforce, shedding older workers, bringing in younger ones.
Okay, so functions for the economy and for employers. What about individuals?
For individuals, they create predictability. They allow for biographical planning. Retirement is coming, you can prepare. And maybe most importantly, they give workers a legitimate claim.
A claim to what?
A claim to compensation, to support, in return for a lifetime of work. It embeds retirement in the moral economy of work societies. It's like an implicit social contract. You work your life, society supports your retirement.
So it's deeply tied into our sense of fairness and obligation. These hidden functions are what make it so hard to change, even if it seems inefficient on the surface.
That's the argument, yes. These anchors are incredibly strong.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, Kohli's work really paints a picture where our individual lives are just deeply, deeply shaped by these big historical and social structures around work and age. It's much more complex than just you get old, you retire.
Absolutely. And a key takeaway, I think, is about those social divisions. While we often hear about generations fighting over resources.
Like pensions, yeah.
Right. Kohli's work and the data consistently points back to the fact that the divisions within generations, the class differences, remain incredibly important and are often actually deepened by aging. The rich elderly and the poor elderly have very different experiences.
And that public contract between generations still holds up surprisingly well.
It seems to. It enjoys high legitimacy, partly perhaps because state pensions free younger generations from having to directly support their elders financially in the same way they might have historically.
So for you listening, what does this all mean? Well, understanding these powerful, often invisible, institutional anchors, it's not just theory. It can really help you make sense of your own life path, your choices, and the pressures you might feel.
It gives you a framework for seeing the bigger picture.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something provocative from Kohli.
Yeah.
If this institutionalized life course, with its clear stages and age boundaries, actually did start to dissolve completely,
If it truly deinstitutionalized.
would that actually make conflicts around age and generations worse? More direct, more personal, harder to manage?
It's a challenging question. It makes you wonder if these structures, even with their rigidities, might actually play a role in keeping a certain kind of social peace. Something to ponder.